What is the history of ancient Egypt? The region along the Nile River in East Africa, which we now know as Egypt, was called Kemet in ancient times. Kemet means black land. The local Egyptians, how did they live? There's an area called Fayum, where a tradition existed that women, before marriage, were required to engage in intimate relations with a stranger in a temple. Further on, we'll see that even up to the time of the pharaohs, they would marry their siblings, including their sisters. When and how was the first kingdom established in Egypt? It's said that Nama was the first king. Were any of these rulers good for their people? The riches earned by the people filled the coffers of these rulers, so in that sense, they were indeed oppressive. They presented themselves as gods. An income of $9.53 million was generated during Cleopatra's reign. Why did the Egyptians mummify their pharaohs? Preserving the body intact meant ensuring safe passage to the next world, where they would reign as kings. How did the idea of building pyramids come about, and which was the first pyramid? Khufu, a pharaoh, built the 3 famous pyramids. Did one pharaoh ever kill another? We see in the Persian dynasty that Xerxes was killed by his bodyguard, much like what happened with Indira Gandhi, who was the first to challenge the power of the pharaohs from outside. The Hyksos challenged them first. How did Alexander establish his rule in Egypt? When he arrived, Egypt fell into his lap without a fight, and he founded a city there, Alexandria. In today's podcast, you'll learn about the captivating history of ancient Egypt, how the pharaoh's rule was established, how the ancient Egyptians lived, which gods and goddesses they worshipped, how the great pyramids of Giza were built, which pharaoh was made an example of, and how Alexander the Great conquered Egypt. To uncover interesting facts and the hidden history of Egypt, make sure to watch this podcast until the end. What is the history of ancient Egypt, and which region was it built upon? Who were the people living there, and what was their religion? The area along the Nile River in East Africa, which is modern-day Egypt, was known as Kemet in ancient times. Kemet means black land. Now, this wasn't due to the people being dark-skinned, but because of the black water and the floods that made the land fertile, hence the name Black Land. The name Egypt came later, from the Greek temple of Apis, but its original name was Kemet. Why was it called Kemet? In the local language, it meant black earth because of the fertile soil. This region was divided into 2 parts, Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt, separated by the Nile Delta. These 2 distinct lands were later united. Their religion, based on mythological stories we've uncovered, shows they were devout worshippers of gods and goddesses with strict codes of worship. For example, there's a vast sea with a giant pyramid in it, and atop that pyramid is a lotus flower. When the lotus blooms, light emerges, and that light is Ra, their god of light. Ra has 2 children, Shu, the goddess of air, and Tefnut, the god of rain. These 2 venture into the sea and don't return for a long time, so Ra weeps in their memory. His tears create humans. This is one of their mythological tales. Over time, people stopped worshipping Ra and began worshipping a serpent god. Why? As humans discovered and understood things like rain, which became commonplace, floods would destroy their fields. In unpredictable times filled with uncertainty, if a god or goddess couldn't protect their crops or existence, faith would waver. The lotus-born Ra, the light, is akin to Zeus in Greek mythology. Some influences from the Levant and Mesopotamian civilizations are also evident. Their agricultural systems, basket weaving, and tools show Mesopotamian influence. Naturally, when you draw inspiration from others, it extends to gods and goddesses too. They believed some gods were better, so they turned to the serpent god, which angered Ra, and he departed. Then came the agrarian era, bringing new myths, destructions, insecurities, and dreams. This period, known as the pre-dynastic age, spans from 700 BCE to 3000 BCE. Before the pharaohs, in the dynastic age, 31 dynasties emerged, divided into royal families. In these myths, we see Osiris, a new supreme god, and his wife Isis, the rain goddess. This is a famous story. Osiris was a benevolent god, as during his time, agriculture flourished. Floods came but weren't catastrophic. They receded, leaving fertile land that produced abundant grain, bringing prosperity. People revered Osiris for this. Osiris had a brother, Set, who was jealous of Osiris's popularity and success. Like in Indian mythology with Ram and Ravana, or Greek mythology with Hercules and Prometheus, every mythology has a hero and a villain. Here, Set is the villain. Set's wife has an affair with Osiris, resulting in a child, which enrages Set. Sexual freedom was prevalent in ancient Egyptian mythology and society, as we'll discuss later. Set devises a plan, crafting an exquisite, valuable coffin and hosting a grand feast, inviting Osiris. He declares that whoever fits perfectly in the coffin will receive it. Osiris fits perfectly, and Set locks the coffin and throws it into the river. Unlike Ram or Ravana with their magical powers, Egyptian gods had limited abilities. Osiris couldn't escape the coffin. Isis weeps and searches for him with their son, Anubis, born from her affair with Osiris. Anubis finds Osiris, but before he can revive him, Set cuts Osiris into 14 pieces and scatters them across distant lands. Isis collects and embalms these pieces. Osiris cannot return to this world but becomes a god of flesh and bone in the afterlife. Later, Isis's son, Horus, battles Set, both transforming into hippopotamuses, a significant animal in Egyptian culture, depicted in their art. Horus defeats Set, restoring peace and vanquishing evil. This story was immensely popular in ancient Egypt. Was this myth created by the Egyptians or borrowed from the Greeks? No, the Greeks came much later, around the 4th century BCE, with Alexander's conquest. We're talking about 5000 BCE, long before the Greeks, Romans, Arabs, or Assyrians. These were local, indigenous people. How did they live? In tribes. To understand, let's consider 4 regions: Fayum, Merimde, Kada, and Badari. In Fayum, during the pre-dynastic age, 5000 to 3000 BCE, people practiced agriculture, growing wheat, barley, and other grains. Excavations and hieroglyphs reveal they were peaceful, with simple burials and an average lifespan of 50 to 60 years. Their tools, used for tilling, were made of wood or ivory. A tradition, uncovered through hieroglyphs, shows women purified themselves before marriage by engaging in intimate relations with strangers or priests in temples. This is hard to grasp today, but it was common. Marrying siblings, including sisters, was also widespread, even among pharaohs. Were these Egyptians hot-tempered? Not in Fayum. They were moderate, like the Indus Valley civilization, living communally, cooking together on a large scale, with no concept of individual homes. In Kada, however, we see individual homes and evidence of battles. Skulls with severe injuries suggest conflict. Kada, in Upper Egypt, about 170 kilometers from Fayum, had 3 settlements: Hierakonpolis, Kada, and another. Here, we find spears, daggers, bows, and arrows, unlike Fayum's baskets and bowls. Battles likely occurred over water, the source of life, employment, and transport. The Badari people were tall, dark-skinned, with sharp features, clean-shaven, and warrior-like. Elite burials contained valuable jewelry, indicating a distinct class. Merimde's people were hunter-gatherers, creating human sculptures. Archaeologists deciphered these details from hieroglyphs and petroglyphs. What language did they speak? Studies of hieroglyphs suggest they used phonetic, meaningful sounds to communicate, though a formal language emerged around the 13th century BCE. Their society was capable, creating intricate patterns, myths, and gradually developing social codes. They built the world's most remarkable architectural monuments, proving their skill. Was it male-dominated? In the dynastic age, female pharaohs like Hatshepsut emerged, often as regents for young heirs. In the pre-dynastic age, women weren't heavily marginalized. In agrarian societies, women were crucial, starting agriculture while men hunted. Jewelry and adornments were necessities for women, who managed the land. While hunting societies showed slight male dominance, women weren't overtly marginalized. When and how was the First Kingdom established? Narmer, around 3984 to 2474 BCE, is considered the first king during the early dynastic period, 3rd to 6th dynasties. Some say Narmer and Menz were the same person, though it's debated. This kingdom emerged gradually over centuries, not through a single proclamation. From hunting to agriculture, trade, and wars, class stratification and dynasties developed. Those with wealth, power, or trade dominance rose. Wars were mostly internal, over resources like water, not foreign invasions initially. The pharaohs, when they emerged, faced little resistance from locals, except for Akhenaten, who tried to shift worship from multiple gods to one, sparking fierce opposition. People destroyed his statues and legacy, which Tutankhamun later reversed. Were any pharaohs benevolent? They were like any kings, called pharaohs instead of Caesars or Tsars. They imposed taxes, exploiting people's labor. For example, mining in Mount Sinai meant a large share went to the pharaoh. Cleopatra's reign generated $9.53 million in income. They portrayed themselves as godlike, requiring oppression to maintain that image. Even in death, they oppressed, burying attendants, horses, or chariots with them to serve in the afterlife. Why mummification? They believed an intact body ensured safe passage to the next world as a godlike king. Organs, except the heart, deemed essential, were removed, and the body was filled with special salt and wrapped to preserve it. Some royal women's bodies were left to decompose slightly before mummification to prevent violation by embalmers, indicating prevalent crimes. Did pharaohs have harems? Yes, they had multiple wives, concubines, and attendants, which wasn't considered improper. Women weren't depicted as rivals over men in art. Commoners weren't mummified. It was costly and reserved for royals portraying a godlike image. The pyramid idea stemmed from tombs, inspired by a mythological pyramid with a lotus flower. They symbolized eternal life and grandeur, built with public funds, like Mughal tombs. Khufu built the 3 Giza pyramids, using granite, limestone, and mortar. Stones were transported via the Nile, kept wet, and carved with wooden pegs. Their engineering marvel lies in precise alignment with constellations, ensuring durability. Skilled labor, not just slaves, built them over roughly 20 years, seen as a national cause. Workers earned more than farmers, though the wealth didn't trickle down to society. What was below the pyramids? Hidden chambers and labyrinths protected against thieves or time's decay. Their concept of the afterlife lacked heaven, hell, or divine justice, just a continuation of their kingly status. Pharaohs built temples for gods but didn't worship themselves, though Akhenaten tried monotheism and failed. Egypt was a superpower for 1,000 years, unchallenged until Mediterranean powers emerged. Pyramids used 2.3 million tons of blocks, 5.5 million tons of granite, 8,000 tons of limestone, and 500,000 tons of mortar, reflecting immense wealth but also extravagance. Pharaohs were indulgent, hunting, drinking, and enjoying luxuries. Yet, some, like Khufu, Djoser, or Tutankhamun, achieved great feats, expanding trade to Sudan, Somalia, and India. Not every reign was prosperous. Some faced wars or political upheaval, allowing Mesopotamians or Assyrians to conquer them. Succession followed a hereditary line initially, but by the 9th and 10th dynasties, new families rose. Around 31 pharaohs ruled across 30 dynasties. Female pharaohs like Hatshepsut, 1507 to 1485 BCE, ruled effectively, adopting male attire and behavior to assert authority. Her stepson later erased her legacy. Did pharaohs kill each other? Local wars between families occurred, with battle injuries found in graves. Water was a key conflict driver. The administrative structure centered on the pharaoh, supported by a network of advisors. They were deemed oppressive for punishing rebels harshly. Xerxes' bodyguard killed him, feeling his community was marginalized, reflecting resentment against foreign rulers. The Hyksos, 1650 to 1535 BCE, first challenged pharaohs externally, using advanced bronze weapons. They ruled for 100 to 150 years until Imos expelled them. Alexander conquered Egypt easily in 322 BCE, founding Alexandria, a cultural hub. Greeks learned astronomy from Egyptians, though some claim these texts were written by Egyptians in Greek. Cleopatra, Ptolemy's daughter, ruled as regent with her brother, who later exiled her. She allied with Julius Caesar, her lover, to defeat her brother and become pharaoh. After Caesar's assassination by Roman senators, Cleopatra married Antony, ruling until Octavian attacked. She committed suicide with poison, ending her reign. Cleopatra was intelligent, diplomatic, and beautiful, with debates about her appearance but agreement on her dark complexion and sharp features. Female pharaohs like Nefertiti were depicted in hieroglyphs engaging in intimate acts, often with their husbands, suggesting indulgence, though though artistic bias may exaggerate this. Foreign invasions, Persians, Romans, Greeks, Muslims, and British, challenged pharaohs. The British later colonized Egypt. In this podcast, we explored ancient Egypt's history. In the next, we'll discuss how Muslims conquered Egypt.